Welcome to the Porsche Club Insider, your one stop for all things Porsche and PCA. Here's your host, Vu Gwyn, and the Insider crew.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Porsche Club Insider episode 97. Around the table, we have our normal cast and crew, Manny Albin, Damon Lowney, Robert Forsyth at the controls, but we have a very special guest, someone that's near and dear to our heart, someone that we often see on Saturday mornings, and that is William Williams, founder of Hunt Valley Horsepower. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, everybody. And as a regular viewer, Monday, 6 a.m. is a big deal at the Hunt Valley Horsepower office. And you guys are always on the background. As much as I try to pay attention with a lot of my keys fluttering, I'm a huge fan. Number one fan. I will fight for that.
And you know what? I know you're saying that not just because you're here, because over the past couple of years, as we've had several episodes, you reference the episodes when we're together at the show on Saturday. So thank you very much for your support from the very beginning.
Well, I appreciate you guys. Again, amazing job here. It's a true honor to be here. Thank you.
So today we'll talk about how event like yours and car shows that are a little bit, as Manny said, a decade, maybe a decade and a half ago, didn't really exist. These car shows
20 years
ago.
Cars and coffee was not in our vernacular. It's not something we said until, that little event started, I think, in Irvine, California. Mm-hmm. And it seemed so easy. Like, how did we not think of this? But before you had to have an organized car show and bring donuts and bring coffee, and everything was organized, and you had to register ahead of time. And Cars and Coffee changed that whole culture where you could just show up, get your hang out with your friends for a couple hours, and then be home if you had honey-do stuff to do, or you didn't want to lose your whole Saturday at a car show, and still get your car fixed every week.
And, a lot of times people, when they say to me, the car culture is not as strong as it used to be, kids are not into cars, and blah, 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 blah. I go, there is so much more for a car enthusiast to do today than there was 10, 15 years ago. And it's because of grassroots efforts such as this that, no matter what make you follow, you can go and find your enthusiast friends or make enthusiast friends at these events. So I always, that's my counterpoint to people. It's just any given Saturday or Sunday, there's tons of places to go to. And in high school here in Howard County, the only place that I had was, they called it the Church of Holy Donuts in Burtonsville. And it was mostly the older hot rod guys. And, they were still very welcoming, but it's never been sort of as big as what we know today as a Cars and Coffee.
I mean, there were cruises, but the cruises were always limited to hot rods. So if you had a Honda or you had a Porsche, or you never felt welcomed. Yeah. Because I know people were very nice, but it was just you didn't see other Hondas or Porsches or whatnot at the cruise, and so you would say, well, maybe this is not for me, and that still exists to a certain point. But I think overall, Cars and Coffee is a great way for enthusiasts to get their car fixed.
So, Will, join in the conversation. Yeah. Whatever topic we may be, covering, just feel free to jump in. And let's start with what we did last week.
Last week here, it was going to snow. They called for tons of snow, so much so that the few faithful that showed up to Cars and Coffee with Will, we all drove our daily drivers with winter tires. And the parking lot, they called for, I think, an inch, and we got a half inch of salt. Oh. With no snow. Just a lot, and they Hunt Valley went heavy on that white stuff on the parking lot, which everyone was glad they didn't bring their Porsches. But some people, diehards, showed up. One older guy showed up in the 30s or 40s hot rod with no convertible top.
That was Frank with a 32 Ford, and just puts his his winter hat on, and his limit's about 15 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh, and that's the edge. But he's 86 years old. Lovely guy. He's been to probably 500 out of the 600 Hunt Valley Horsepowers.
Oh man,
he's a lovely guy.
So we went. We hung out for about 10 minutes, and then we went inside and spent 2 hours. I think this time we went to Panera, and we spent 2 hours solving all the world's automotive problems.
Get your charged lemonade.
I mentioned it to who was it? I said. I don't drink coffee, and I said, you should try the lemonade then. And the girl behind the counter smirked. And
so they still
Cars
offer
lemonade.
Yes, but it's behind the counter. And
yeah, you can't just pour it yourself anymore, I guess.
Yeah, they have the regular lemonade that's no caffeine, but if you're prior to Red Bull or
it's like the
Monster,
menu, right?
you get the charged lemonade.
All that stuff. I used to drink Celsius. I used to drink Red Bulls and Monsters and all that stuff. And after my little stint incident, and I don't even know if it would matter, but I can
tell you, there's not a cardiac doctor that I've met that likes to hear the term, my heart starts racing when I drink this.
So I've given it up, and I still, coffee and tea, but that's about it. How about you?
Yeah, I did a little bit of car stuff. So I replaced the coil pack connectors on the wiring harness for the Camry.
Oh.
And so I thought I would be soldering, and I have know nothing about electrical stuff, so I'm learning. But you have these like little sleeves where you put one end in, the other, and then you crimp it.
Yeah, they're called butt connectors.
My crimping technique has a lot to be desired, but it worked, So I started the car up, went on a drive around. So I go kind of deeper into the peninsula on Dundalk, and there's like a straight road sort of back towards a brewery where there's nothing. There's nobody except, I guess, at night, semi-truck drivers sleeping on the side. So they probably hated me with my exhaust, but I went and scraped all the rust off the brake discs and everything and drove it around. And I felt, I'm going to go get some gas. It's half a tank. That tank has been in there since July, since I parked it. And turned the car off, filled up. The car wouldn't turn back on.
Oh, no.
So the problem's still there. And I waited around for 10, 15 minutes to see if it cooled down, it would work, and it didn't. And then I figured, well, I'll just hold the key in the starter for like 4 or 5 seconds instead of just letting it rev up, because it would rev up and then stall. It wouldn't even idle. And it idled fine, drives perfectly. So there's something going on that I'm going to have to search.
So why did you have to use butt connectors to replace coil packs? Doesn't just
not
have
the coil,
a plug?
the coil pack, the connectors on the wiring harness side.
So
they connect to the coil packs. One of them was broken and they're old. And
I see.
A video I watched, a guy had the same problem as me, a mechanic, and he went through all these diagnostic. And after trying 4 or 5 different things, it was just a bad
connector that connects to the coil pack.
So I figured, cheap enough, I'll give it a try. But that wasn't it. I don't think it's something else.
So can you buy just the connector? And
yeah. I bought three 6-cylinder, but one connector, one coil pack. It also goes back around to the other firewall side of the engine. So 3 connectors, nice.
These two update the listeners on their
non-Porsches,
their biggest POSs.
It's a great car.
That only worth what parts they put into it that week.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you don't know, it's a 98 Camry V6 manual with no muffler.
But
so it has a resonator but no muffler.
The no muffler wasn't
an
option for Toyota. It's
just
something that happened.
It would rust it off anyway.
So not good for Hunt Valley horsepower.
Yeah.
It's not that loud.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually, I think it would be fine.
Yeah, it's not that.
I think
it's
it would
not
be
pushing much volume.
It's not nearly as loud as you'd think it would be.
Okay.
But he would be frowned upon if he parked on the main drag of Hunt Valley horsepower, because
Radwood it would work.
It has a hole. I don't know. Radwood has some
standards
too. It has a hole in the hood from rust that really baffled the guys the engineers from Porsche, because they were amazed at what America allows on their highways.
I drove to Amelia Island and
okay. So to turn this educational, So the little butt connectors that you're talking about, where you go end to end, and there's a plastic barrel, right? If you look into the barrel, you will see where the metal kind of has a seam. It has like the split at the top, right? Yep. So when you use your crimping tool, where it should squeeze, that
is on that little divot.
It should be at the top. So that way when it crushes, it kind of crushes into the wire. And that's just been that's how I was taught. I'm assuming that's the right way, because I've done thousands of car stereos with those connectors.
I have one of those kind of basic flat crimpers and wire cutters, and the end where you crimp, it's too thick to go in between the coil pack wire. So it was just I just crimp. Each one, it was really.
So this is educational for high mileage Toyota.
Yes, exactly.
Not Porsche people.
You have to crimp something.
On the Porsche side, so I mentioned in the last podcast that I was putting an 82 millimeter IPD competition plenum in with the 82 millimeter throttle body that's required, and the stock 987.1 air oil separator, the motorsports version. The way they route the new set of tubes makes it so it won't fit. It won't connect to the AOS because it has to go underneath the throttle body, which is now mounted on the plenum. And after I got to speak with Greg from IPD, and great guy, he's going to be helping me out, but basically they have not seen my setup before and didn't design for it. So whether he's asking some of his friends and colleagues, I'm sure, to see if they've found a solution for this, because I can't imagine if a motorsport air oil separator, and that is it, that's over it should be going under the plenum, but it obviously doesn't reach the AOS if it goes over the top. But I'm going to have to either see if he knows somebody who has a solution, like using some other AOS tube that might fit the motorsport AOS, or more likely, it sounds like I'll be taking it to Cauliflower and having a custom.
So that tube there, is that hard plastic or is that
Yeah,
rubber?
it's a hard plastic. It has, as you can see, some little accordion things, so it doesn't bend a lot, and it is plastic.
So why couldn't you, say, cut where the hard plastic is and oversize tube and then do 2 clamps on the end just to extend it?
I might be able to. It's a vacuum. I've thought about that. I've thought about taking the fittings off of, and if I don't hear from Greg from IPD about a solution, then it sounds like maybe pulling the connectors off the AOS tubes off, then taking it to a local hoses and fitting shop to have them fab up a custom
one. That's probably the
tube.
best way to do it. But I would chop it and then just take a...
Yeah, and see if it works, and worst that happens is the vacuum isn't sealed and I just try again.
Yeah.
But we'll see. But yeah, so I am, sounds like maybe working with IPD about a solution for us 987 owners who have the motorsport AOS.
There you go.
So and that's what I did.
You give up 99% of your Saturdays, right? So
I think you give up every Saturday.
Every Saturday since March 31st, 2012.
So your car time, your fun time, is that reserved for Sunday, or you try to do that during the week?
I try. Yeah, a lot of people try to pull me out of Hunt Valley Horsepower and have an extended Saturday.
Yeah.
It's like jumping off like a concert stage where you're peak activity, peak attention, peak emotion, and then all of a sudden you almost just want to crash when you're off stage.
Yeah.
So when they're picking me up and say, hey, let's go to the Eastern Shore, or something, or it involves a long drive, that's when I hit the coffee.
Yeah.
It's not in the morning because I'm already jazzed up or really fired up.
Right.
And to that point, yeah, that's really it. It's that Saturday afternoon, late morning. And Sundays, sure. I don't, again, this is really my full-time lifestyle. So whenever things are happening, I'm typically out there, but I'm typically doing car stuff stem to stern. But I like that little rest, kind of like late afternoon on Saturdays.
And you drive a what kind of BMW? I know it's white and it has Will on the license
It's an
plate.
E90, isn't it?
Yeah, E92. Yeah, E92.
Okay.
Yeah, E90 class. But E92, it's 335 X-Drive M Sport. And the Will license plate was kind of lucky, I would have to say. I went down to the DMV and they said, "Oh, you're the VIP that had a reserved Will." And at that time, Will Smith was looking at buying, Jada Pinkett with Will Smith was looking at buying Cal Ripken's home.
What?
And eventually our good friend through Hunt Valley Horsepower, the Oriole Adam Jones, eventually bought it. Oh, sorry about that. And as I'm getting demonstrative. But to that point, it's, so that license plate say, oh, so you're not the VIP.
No, you should say, yes,
You
I am.
are.
I am.
You should have gotten like Will I Am.
Well, they
right?
said, well, it's illegal for us to, hold it. So you're here, you get it. And
Nice.
Drove out of the DMV, parked in front of Cal's old house, and 5 cars stop. Said, "Oh, are you the publicist for Will Smith?"
Oh, no way.
And apparently, it was all over the news that they were looking to buy that house, and I'm like, "I'm just a guy, just a guy.
just Will.
I'm
Just
just
Will.
a guy. Yeah, same name, but just a $guy."
Hey, if Will Smith is listening,
Sorry, Will.
name your price,
Sorry,
Will,
Will. Sorry,
about
Will.
how much
Yeah.
you want for the license
Yeah,
plate.
$10,000 starting.
So let's go back a little bit.
Yeah.
And how I wanted to bring Will on because he created the Hunt Valley, not called Cars and Coffee, but we call it Cars and Coffee. And then you had Vu, who created an event called Mikey and Mels. They call it Cruise, but everybody refers to it Mikey and Mels, which
So
is
fun
the name
fact,
of a deli.
I didn't realize Vu had created that until
You got to
last
get
week.
out of the house more often on the weekends.
Before you start, though, for the listeners, why don't you give them a little bit of education on what happened to and why many events are not called Cars and Coffee?
Cars and Coffee is copyrighted.
That's it.
I believe by the folks who started it in was Irvine. Mm-hmm. It was at I forgot, was it a Toyota parking lot or Nissan or Honda? Or
I don't remember.
It was somebody's, I thought it was a car.
Might have been a Ford and Mazda parking
Was
lot.
that what it was? Ford
Yeah.
Mazda.
After they moved from the Cove.
I remember seeing pictures of it, and it was seemed like a sea of different cars. And I thought, this is the coolest thing ever, because you'd see everyone was bringing out their rare car, and you'd have like GT40 showing up. And it was like, I got to get there someday. I never made it, but then you started seeing them popping up around the country as that same formula. But yeah, Cars and Coffee is copyrighted, so that's why you see Cars and Octane or Cars and Cappuccino or whatever clever thing. But Mikey and Mels, I never really considered a Cars and Coffee, particularly because when they initially started, they started like at 10 or 11. Mm-hmm. So it was a great segue after the Hunt Valley event. But going back, so, Will, when did you start Hunt Valley? Because a lot of people think it's been there forever, and it wasn't. For the longest time, Hunt Valley was a mall, and they transformed over to an outdoor type of shopping center. And I always like to joke that the lot that we actually gathered for Cars and Coffee, we had used for midnight autocrossing at one time, and that's back when the whole side of the mall was a big parking lot. And one of our members in our club knew the owner or the manager of the mall, and he let us come at midnight and do an autocross for 4 hours. And so fast forward, and now we're gathering these big gatherings. So, Will, how did it start? Because nobody was gathering prior to this, right?
No, it was really just a small coffee shop just to the north of Hunt Valley Town Center, the filling station. They said maybe 10 of us used to get together. And they said it might be a few marauders, like old police interceptors, maybe a Ferrari or two, a handful of Porsches, and that was it. And they were trying to deal with the town center. And the word after I started, they said, how did you break the code to deal with them? Because we couldn't understand what it took, the rules, the commitment, and things like that. So I can tell you exactly when I started thinking about it. It was 2011, and I was working employee healthcare for Becton Dickinson. I ran that program for about 10 years, and that's what brought me to the state in 2003. And it came out to the point where I had a bad back injury. I was training somebody for mixed martial arts. We were able to box at that location. We weren't throwing people, in a corporate environment, but we were able to box. He was very excited to work with me. And I would say he's probably a 40-year-old man with a 15-year-old sensibility with his hands, and hit me when I was just going through my papers, not seeing him. And I hit up against the door frame. I actually broke my S1 in my lower back, non-displaced. Whoa. But it came to a point where I didn't have like a hospital stay or anything like that. But as a healthcare guy, as a real physically fit guy back in the day, before the gray showed up, it was really a commitment for me. But it came to a point where if I'm going to become maybe now a manager in a big office instead of the active guy, I need a new hobby. All right. And it was that moment. Those, I think, 2 months, I was still going to work. And over those 2 months, over those weekends, I decided to say, hey, what is this hobby? Well, in cars, it was perfect. And I looked around, and there wasn't a Cars and Coffee within 40 miles of Hunt Valley. There was Columbia, I believe. I believe there was the Holy Donut.
Holy Donuts, yeah.
And
Katie's.
Katie's,
but that's really far away.
Yes, very far away. And then in Pennsylvania, you'd have to go all the way up to Shrewsbury. So there was nothing in 40 miles. So I started talking around. I went to back when message boards were cool. I'd start up my Hunt Valley Horsepower or Hunt Valley Cars and Coffee account. That's what it started as. It took about a year to change over. That's a whole other story. But just to gauge the interest. Do we have enough interest within 40 miles or 60 miles of Hunt Valley to say that we could do something maybe every week or maybe once a week or once a month or maybe twice a month? So the feedback was extraordinary. to say, hey, we need something at home, close by. Oh, and by the way, good luck in dealing with the property because we're not sure how to break that code. And but it came out to the point where there was enough interest, and actually a private investigator from a local county, on the police force, he says, well, maybe you should make a flyer. Maybe, I'll follow you around. We'll put it on some nice cars. That wasn't exactly the best idea. That was actually my introduction to the management at Hunt Valley Town Center. Greenberg Gibbons, they're fantastic. But I met their asset manager. They were holding the one flyer.
What is this?
What is this 5x7 card with this Ford GT on it with a potential event on our property that we haven't heard about yet? I said, well, that was the litmus test to see if there was enough interest to now speak with you. And again, right then and there, half an hour later, they said, Will, we love your idea. What's your first day?
Oh, wow.
Nice.
And I said, well, it's on that card, March 31st, 2012, 7:30 to 9:30. That's back in the day when Best Buy was still there. So we had different opening times, so I wanted to make sure that we weren't encroaching upon a 10 o'clock time for the non-food merchants. So again, now we have, back in the day, it was Caribou Coffee. That was before Joe's Crab Shack and things like that, what is now Iron Rooster. But the idea was to incentivize the property, to say, hey, there is value here. The people can, love this, property, and, they can love the community, love their vehicles, but they can also contribute to the value of the property because that's what the property wants to hear.
Did you do your research before handing those flyers out and getting that impromptu meeting, in the sense that had you already looked up, which stores are opening, which part of the parking lot? So it sounds like that they recognize that right off the bat.
Yeah, and I think it's something that was, again, in 2000, that was early 2012 with that, jump-in meeting. Wow, everyone's here. I mean, they said, well, this is the perfect time for you not to just jump in because everyone's here to make this decision. But that was the idea. Caribou Coffee was going to be really the hub. And, they had heard mildly about cars and coffee, the idea. But within that half an hour, it was like my elevator pitch to say this can be something great. Nice. And I wasn't sure yet if it was going to be a weekly or it was going to be a monthly or anything like that. But over time, I said, you know what? I had heard actually from Paul Cito from BMW CCA. I ran into him on a random BWI run because they were all going to Dallas for their big, I think, yearly. And he said, you know what? Do it every week because people won't need to know when it is.
That's a good point.
True.
Yeah. So, and again, that's the idea now. Thanks, Paul.
Great idea.
The idea of, really having it rain or shine was really, a cinch. And, but they loved it from the fact that we can then make their coffee shop extremely popular. And when Pete's Coffee bought out a bunch of Caribous, Pete's Coffee is now resident there. Their Pete's Coffee became the number one Pete's Coffee in the United States.
Nice.
Really?
During that time.
Yeah, absolutely.
During that time, and Iron Rooster, when they bought out Joe's Crab Shack, they came during one of our Toys for Tots events. And at the time, we were the number one county for Toys for Tots on the East Coast. And the business development director, he goes, Will, you don't know me from a Hill of Beans, but we're doing business together. And, again, we had a great relationship in helping open Iron Rooster. So that is, I think, the physical matter beyond all the physical you see. They were very impressed with the amount of, flow through, I guess, or whatever they said. A lot of feet, a lot of interested eyes. Even if you're not buying coffee, you might be, buying a shower curtain at Burlington when you're done. Or you might be food shopping at Wegmans. I'm not name dropping, but, that's a...
Or you could bring your significant other who may not be a car person, and they can go shopping because it's a huge shopping area, and you're not pressured. It's not like a Cars and Coffee in the middle of nowhere with nothing to do. It's also worth mentioning for both Mikey and Mels and Hunt Valley is they're both in an area that's affluent within 20 miles. So there's a lot of nice exotic cars for the pickings where the owners, it isn't a long drive. I mean, for me, Cars and Coffee is like a 35-minute drive because I live in Harford County, which isn't the affluent part of the state. But to me, it's not a big deal at all to drive 35 minutes to it. But for a lot of people, it's an easy drive. They can bring out their cool cars that they probably wouldn't drive on the interstate. They just take the back roads to these events. So All right, we hear how Hunt Valley gets started. Mikey and Mels, not as old as Hunt Valley, but it was a hit right from when it started. So Mikey and Mels is a deli owned by two brothers.
Yep.
And I guess, did they want to have more exposure for the deli? Is that why they wanted to have this cruise?
Yeah, basically that's it. Two brothers that are really into cars. They own Mikey and Mels Deli, the property managers. And before I get into Mikey and Mels, the reason why I was so excited when Manny said he wanted to bring you on and talk about cars and coffee is because I want to give props to not only you, but to all the organizers out there that run a cars and coffee type event, because Manny mentioned earlier about cars and coffee just as an organic thing that people gather and this, that, and the other, which is true for the participant, but for the organizer it is actually a very much choreographed dance that we do every time we put on an event, when it comes to the flow of traffic, to watching, making sure no hooligans do things, how the cars are parked, making sure people drive, at a rate where they're not going to hit someone. The stress level for event organizers is peak for the first, at least, half of the event. And, you have to have the support of the people that allow you to have the event there. So I guess, again, I was just excited that this topic was going to come up because I want people to realize that it just doesn't just kind of happen. There's somebody behind the scenes making sure that all the ducks in the row, that people can have a safe place to bring their car, have a good time, and also be able to come back, because so many people come and, goodness gracious, I don't need to hear your exhaust. I mean, there's 500 cars here. I'm sure it's a great exhaust, but you don't need to hit the rev limiter and let it bounce there and do, whatever. It's just unnecessary. And what I love is you can tell who the veteran goers are because they get that, but sometimes you get the young and old that may not know sort of the let's say the proper etiquette at Cars and Coffee.
And that happens anything from autocross to a Concours. It's the non-regulars. It's the people that aren't really part of the community.
That's right.
Because either Mikey and Mels or Hunt Valley, if you're part of the community, you're not going to do anything to jeopardize this lot because you may lose it. You know how valuable these type of lots are.
And that's what people don't realize. It only takes one knucklehead to ruin it for all of us, because they might either get into an accident or somebody in the neighborhood complains. And so we all have to do a better job of making sure everyone understands that etiquette. So anyways,
before we go into a tangent for that, so quick history of Mikey and Mels.
Yeah, so again, Mikey and Mels Deli, the two brothers opened up a deli in Maple Lawn, which is a community in this area, and they had access to a beautiful sized lot. And they said, we would love to, bring a group of people, see the nice cars. They themselves have nice cars, and we wanted to do something in the morning to take advantage of the deli. Now, what's different from what you do is you do it every week. Obviously, I don't have the bandwidth. Like, they asked for my help because I know, I do events for PCA, and I said, look, I could give you maybe one weekend a month, and I'm going to be very specific on how it's done. One is I'm very respectful of Hunt Valley Horsepower and Katie's, and I said I don't want to do something that is going to be dab at the same times that they do things. And also, my goal was to bring a little bit younger of a crowd, and my brother's a perfect example. Nothing against Katie's or you at Hunt Valley, but he will never wake up at 6:30, 7 o'clock to go to a car show. He will never do that. It's just his age and his thought processes. But he might wake up at 9 o'clock to be there at 10 o'clock. So it's definitely a later show. It's still.
I've never seen your brother at a car show.
I know. It's he might. He might. I said
theoretically.
What o'clock would be the
if it happens.
But you can see.
Use me. Getting up at 7 on a weekend, not really my thing.
Only for autocross. Only for autocross.
But yeah.
But you can see the demographic shift every hour that you have the show later. In fact, I've mentioned that I go to a buddy's show called Sunset Cars and Coffee that doesn't start until like 4, 5 o'clock and runs till dusk. And that is even, the age drops like by 20 years. But again, the whole idea is people come out, relax, have fun. We have music, we have a charity that we support, and it's only for what, 2 hours? So 3 hours.
Let me come from a participant's point of view. Much like I used to think PCA people only did this, but evidently it's all car people. It starts at 10.
Oh,
they start showing up at 8.
Yeah. Yes.
Because I've come at 8 sometimes to help him out initially.
Yeah.
And you would see all these people starting to come in. I'm like, I thought this starts at 10.
Yeah.
And by 10 o'clock, it was already full. And if you showed up at 10 o'clock, you were parking. Which bring you to the next question, so people have an idea of the size of these both events. How many parking spots are available?
In our main lot, we have about 450.
450. What about you, Will? How many?
I would say in the extended area, about 700. And
Right, 700.
there are occasions where you can accommodate more, just in different parts of the property.
Yeah.
So Mikey and Mels is, I believe, pure commercial. You have no residential.
It's a commercial lot.
Yeah, so it's
but it's
every corner.
It's adjacent to a neighborhood, so we are sensitive to that.
Because now, Will, when we started, we didn't have residential, but then midway through, I remember they built the condominiums. Of course, we all panicked because we thought this is the end of our event, because the people who live there, no way are they going to put up with people showing up at 6:37 in the morning.
Yeah, and that was 4 years into it, and that added a vertical amphitheater effect. So the exhaust notes that were a little bit offensive became that.
Now you have reverb.
It is a little bit more of a concert set.
Yeah.
And before that idea with the apartments, you used to be able to drive around the property. There was a point back in 2015 for when I had anniversaries. To imagine 3,000 cars were there that morning.
Oh my gosh.
And the state police called me from the interstate and says, Will, you don't know where I'm standing. I know where you are. We have a 2-mile backup on the interstate. Get your gates moving. And that's when that was the official, like 7:30, allow people into the main parking area. And they put the state police helicopter over the top. They all knew about it. I had, I think, 9 policemen as policemen volunteers for the day. And, of course, 9 security people and things like that, and a bunch of our community folks. And they took that photo. And they're not, I would have loved to have it here, but they said, that's for the state records. I think we might put that up on the wall. But they said it was an amazing day. But to those extents, I don't want 3,000 cars.
No, not at all.
But the property broke records with coffee sales, breakfast sales, even the less than attached merchants. Again, your Burlingtons, your Marshalls, they had people flying through their doors. So it's to that extent. We're serving the idea of, well, you're not going to be able to, you don't need to shop online. Come here, make a morning of it, have an actual coffee, not something you're getting mailed to your door, or just make a nice day out of it.
So I guess that brings it to the next question. And this is for people who are thinking about starting their own event, and they see a lot, and they say this is perfect for a Cars and Coffee. How do you deal with your neighbors? Is there... especially, I guess, the neighbors who may not be so enthusiastic about your event as other ones. Like the coffee shop's a no-brainer. I can't imagine Panera or Pete's not liking having all those cars in the morning and all those people who otherwise, like me, I would not be at Pete's at all that day if it wasn't for this car event.
So I'll start. So I think if you're looking for a spot to have it, you have to look at what is going on at that location during the time that you're proposing to have your show. And if hopefully it's empty and you're not going to encroach and bring a crowd where it's going to create a parking issue for people that are trying to do regular business. And so in Mikey and Mel's case, it's a business park, and the main part of the lot serves a commercial office building that those people aren't there during the weekends. But what is there during the weekends is there's a gas station that sells, obviously gas, but concessions. And then they have multiple restaurants, and all of them would love to have a mass of people come on the weekends to build their business. The other thing is you also have to make sure that the owners of the facility knows exactly what you're doing. And in our case, we not only told them, but we also went to the Howard County Police and said, here's what we're doing. We actually asked them to take a look at our traffic flow and say, this is what we're proposing. we'll do it, for the first couple times. If it works out, great. If not, we can kind of change that flow. And of course, the biggest thing for all of us when you're having an event like this, because you have all these cars coming, you have pedestrians, is you have to have proper insurance. And I know a lot of times people try to put together a casual gathering and this, that, and the other. But once it gets to a certain size and you're expected to run this event, you need to make sure you have proper coverage to protect yourself and whatever organization you might be representing.
That's it. And again, the way that it happened in Hunt Valley, I just had to make sure there was enough space. You're not encroaching, with business. That the businesses that are open, they have enough room to park for their employees. That's the big thing. Early, it's their employees. Even if they're not open, their employees need space. And when you start talking about 400, 500, 600, some of the mornings we may have upwards of 1,100 vehicles. Not all parking in that lower bowl, but they're all other areas of the property. We have to consider everything.
Yeah.
And to the point, again, there's the physical strength you bring to a property. You say, wow, that's your big win. But you want to make sure it's enjoyable for the people that are just regular shoppers.
Yeah.
How do you handle them? And but again, I always think about Marshalls. I think about Burlington. Well, they're not the obvious plug-in. We're not going there to buy coffee. We're not going in there to buy breakfast. But it does draw people. It draws eyes to that property where they can get visibility and say, oh, well, that's where the local Marshalls is. I would have never known.
Yeah. And the other thing that we did, too, is most communities where you're looking to bring an event like this has some sort of Facebook group. And so you should also do your proper marketing and outreach to those folks and say, and if you've been to a Mikey and Mels, it's very family friendly. In fact, I have the team buy Hot Wheels, and every kid that walks through, if I have enough buckets of Hot Wheels, like a kid that's going to wake up early on a weekend to follow their parents around on a lot, they're going to get a Hot Wheel. So the community aspect and, getting out front and letting them know we're doing this not only to enjoy the cars, but the businesses, and it's going to bring attention, as you said, to these other businesses, which might not be at the forefront of people's mind. Mikey and Mel's Deli in Maple Lawn, most people wouldn't have, I guess, ventured to think about why go to a deli at Maple Lawn, but now the whole car show, everybody knows what Mikey and Mel's is, right? So again, a lot of marketing, communication, and a lot of planning. One thing I love, and I haven't been able, it's the Howard County Police knows how we do things, and they are very supportive of ours, so much so that they don't feel like they really need to be there all the time. But I wish they were, and that's what I'm jealous of. What you have is that you always have police officers at the event, and I think that presence makes a huge difference when you're holding an event. So those of you that are thinking of doing that, make sure that go out to the local officers and see if they can be a part of it, because it changes how people act, right?
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
I probably wouldn't do any burnouts in my unmuffled Camry with a police officer present. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's very simple. Very simple. Very simple.
Find you first.
The police, at least at Hunt Valley, they're Baltimore County, and it always looks to me like they're just coming around to look at the cars.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because they're walking around talking to the people about their cars, and you can tell they're enthusiasts because they're asking specific questions, and it's a great. Yeah, if you see their car parked on the side, it's a great deterrent that there is police here. But Will himself does a phenomenal job, and we always joke because you can see his head just running around to the first numbnut that starts revving his engine in the parking lot.
Will on his mountain bike.
Everyone hears the engine revving, and we turn around, and sure enough, we see this head just running around to wherever the noise was. To make sure that we don't lose a lot. And so it's once you become a regular, that just be cool. Don't do anything.
There's a few things here. It's the fact that you had talked about new folks are the ones that may be more apt to cause issues. A lot of our clubs, and again, through now 13 years of Hunt Valley Horsepower, we've built enough tenure with these clubs, and they understand the value to self-police. To the fact that it is normally those one-timers, maybe it's an out-of-state person that may have traveled. We've had people travel from, I think, Sun Valley, California.
Wow.
North Carolina, a full Corvette club. A BMW club came from Illinois. And I'm thinking, wow, these people, they're the first people that I'll address, as a good welcoming. But also the idea of the whole picture It's not a show off. It's not a one person show. It's all about the family. It's all about the community. It's all about sustainability. So yeah, now it's about 605 Saturdays in. I think a lot of the locals, a lot of the region really get the idea to a point even where, kind of growing outside of Hunt Valley, other communities will ask me and say, hey, how do you do this? And, out of Texas, even locally. And, I tell people, hey, does your area need it? And again, when I started it, there wasn't a Cars and Coffee within 40 miles. It was a draw. And it wasn't meant to be a full-time job, which it is now, but that was another story. But to that point, the people needed it. And again, to find that right property, perfect. Great interstate access. I would say merchants that had great reputations. Big brand names that were comfortable for everybody. It's like, oh yeah, I know those guys. I already know what to order when I drop in on Pete's Coffee. And again, the market, the management team for the property, they had that belief system, and they're running hard after it now, and to a point where even in their 50th anniversary, that was one of their most proud things from the property perspective, to say that Hunt Valley Horsepower, it's one of the best things we've ever done for the community. And again, it's just showing that value, and that's it. I mean, just smiles everywhere, take all the stress out of it, but when the things happen, you're running to it.
Absolutely.
I know Manny loves it when he sees me, he hears like an engine or somebody's honking on a horn or something like that. I'm right to it, or maybe a Fiat backs into a 4Runner. I'm right to it. I'm right to it.
But you both of you do, and I notice, and it sends a great message, and it's very you do it very nicely, but you send a message, and that's you're there when the people come in, and you're waving to them, or you stop and you say hi to them in the car. But it's also letting them know there's a sheriff here. So it's not the Wild Wild West. You can't do anything you want. So you've seen my face. You know who I am. Just remember that. And I think that goes a long way, because I go to other Cars and Coffees and you have no idea who's in charge or who's running the show. And at both these booth stands on the corner, you can't miss them, and waves to everyone. Isn't pointing his finger saying behave yourself, just waves, but that also sends a message,
a presence
that someone's in charge of the event. And so if you're planning your own event, I think being involved that way, it goes a long way to let people know that there is someone that's going to be answering for your misdeeds.
Let me ask you this one, Will, because as event organizer, we probably have gone through this cycle. When at first, when you were starting out, so to speak, like you were doing everything and hoping everything that the world would come to your event. But nowadays, now that things are kind of running and it's at a I don't want to say autopilot, but what's your sweet spot? Like, what's the number of cars on the weekend that you think is a comfortable, good flow? Because I would imagine you're like me. I'm not chasing a record anymore. Like, I don't want 1,000 cars. I don't want, I don't want 600 cars. I want a nice flow of cars so that there isn't a 2-mile backup on 29 or 95.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, when it started in 2012, there was so much space. There might have been, I think there were 200 cars that showed up at that first morning, March 31st. And as a BMW owner, the BMW club, when they heard about it, and all of a sudden 50 out of those 200 were BMWs. Oh, it's just going to be a BMW show. Yeah. I'm like, oh no, that's not the point. But, it's really to a point of, driving everybody that's respectful. And it doesn't matter if you're driving a Ford, Fiat, Ferrari, a Porsche, or, a Panda. It doesn't matter. I want to have, great people before great cars, because it's those people that will sustain the community. And in the beginning, that 200 all of a sudden went down to about 50 or 60. And then that year, that was about 3,000 cars that first year. Second year, 2013, 5,400. The next year, 7,800. And so that looked like a nice smooth ride. And then by the third anniversary or the fourth year, 12,000 cars arrived. And that's the year in 2015 when 3,000 cars arrived for that morning. And the property management are standing on the roofs. They said, this looks like a halftime at the Baltimore Ravens with the people coming down the escalators, because they were parking on the northern deck on the northwest side, all the way behind the movie theater before all the grand development was there. And it really came down to a point of, well, that's when we have to stop having anniversaries. So that was the first blockade. Mm-hmm. And then some of the local folks said, ooh, are they continuing? Mm-hmm. No, this is sustainability. So no 4th anniversary. But it came down to a point where it might have averaged 60 cars that first year. But now, on a nice weather day, we can get, 700 to, 1,200 cars. Oof. And people don't see the bowl, beyond where they're parking.
Right.
There's so many other pockets of involvement. And I don't want to put stress on any other merchants that don't have a direct connection.
Right.
So that's when it hit about 700. I pulled back all of the social media. You're going to notice that a lot of my Facebook stopped.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
In fact, back in 2017 at SEMA, I see you wearing the shirt. That was for the RPM Act, where I went out to SEMA and was walking to Mike Levitas. I know you had him on the podcast last week. And I saw all these TVs, and I'm thinking, wow, what is this? I said, don't get rid of this guy. It was Matt Farah. He was on the television. And then Randy Popes, I said, don't get rid of this guy. And amazing. They walked over and said, well, who are you? I said, my name's Will, Hunt Valley Horsepower. Tell us your story. Okay, they heard enough. Come back in a half an hour. I went to talk to Mike Levitas, TPC again, showing off his DSC Sport products. And I said, Mike, there was, I think, TV guys that were interested in what I was talking about. Mm-hmm. It's like, I'm going over there after you. Well, half an hour into that conversation, they said, Will, we checked everything out. I had a nice little conversation with Jimmy Houston. They're a big fisherman who had been represented by them for 40 years. And they said, did you know Jimmy Houston? I said, no. Well, how'd you just start up a conversation? We made a little film for my brother. He's a big fisherman up in the Poconos. And so you didn't know him. Who are you? And it came down to a point of them saying, we want to put you on TV yesterday. Oh. And it would have been Hunt Valley Horsepower all over the TV. Well, what would that have done in 2017 to our community?
Oh, yeah.
For a public access private property, it would have imploded it.
Yeah.
We have an event, Treffin actually, that we do social media posts and everything, but it sells out so quickly that it's kind of like
in
how much
minutes.
How much marketing does it really need?
Yeah,
right?
and I think as people organizing these events, like we have to look at the bigger picture and say, can we maintain the quality with the size that's coming about? And you have to adjust your marketing, as you said, where we don't tell as many people, and then only the diehards come, and then it's a smoother event. It's the quality of cars, and because it can get too much, and you could unravel such a great thing. Question for you is, what do you think our future in holding these are going to be like?
Well, I think in an era as we're in, everything's. If I had a phone here, you'd see a kid in their phone. You'd hear about AI doing their homework. We're so far away from one-on-one interactions, the value of family, the value of community. I personally don't have family within 150 miles of Hunt Valley. And my Saturday mornings everyone here, you're my family. Mm. So I think every club that comes out, at the end of the year, I think about 55,000 people come to Hunt Valley Horsepower that are related, You might have a Vanagon. You might have that father to son, and then maybe 3 daughters come out of that Vanagon. I'm like, that's why we're doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, it's the family base, and we just have to get closer to real interactions, and that's what Cars and Coffees all around the world can do, and to build community, to build family. And I'd have to say, again, in my time, working, healthcare locally, I know a lot of people moved many miles or around the world. But they can come to, hey, there's probably a car show near me.
Yeah.
And they ultimately right away have a family. And just recently for Christmas, a bunch of guys, I'd say maybe like the Rat Pack of Hunt Valley. There are guys that are maybe like 50, 60, 70, 80 years old. And they said, hey, well, come to our show, come to our little gathering after Hunt Valley Horsepower. We're going to have a little dinner. And they said, you know what? If it wasn't for Cars and Coffee, none of us would have known each other. Mm-hmm. And I thought they knew each other for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
They said, we're all essentially 13, friends for the last 13 years. I'm like, wow. So that really gave me a sense of, you're really doing the right thing. And it's more valuable now than ever.
And I feel it's almost like the Grand Central Station for car enthusiasts in your local area. Like I love obviously PCA and all the other different car clubs that, I belong to, but when I go to a Cars and Coffee, like not only do I see the people that are from my clubs, but then I see all these other cars that, of course, you're like, do I want to get into that world? And then you meet the person that has, Manny's laughing because that's how I get myself in trouble. But I'm like, man, do I want to get into that world? And if I get into that world, who do I need to know? Do I need to look for in this car? And it plants a seed in my mind as an adult. I can only imagine if you're taking like I went to some car shows with my dad. Like we went to like the auto shows and stuff like that. But if I had gone to like what we have available today, imagine like there was a seed planted in each and every one of our heads about the cars that we drive today, right? So I think these events like these are just doing a great job in getting the younger folks and those that at some point when they have enough money, and they might maybe even their daily driver now is an enthusiast car, but I think those people at some point will see a nicer car, be it Porsche, Ferrari, whatever they want to be. They're sort of the next generation that feeds into our clubs, and that's why I think this grassroots level effort is so important. And again, not to stand on my soapbox, but we need to support these people and make sure we self-police, as you said, so that we can continue to do this.
Yeah, and I think the ultimate importance, beyond having a very safe and respectful family environment at all Cars and Coffees, is the fact that we are all enthusiasts, obviously. It's the less obvious. It's, again, that 5-year-old that has that matchbox in their hand. Mm-hmm. And when they go home, I just had a picture of somebody, you can probably see it on my Instagram, where they set up all of their matchboxes. They said, "It's Cars and Coffee, Dad."
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's
awesome.
It's why we're doing it.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to pay it forward, all generations, but we have to not disregard the less obvious.
Yeah.
It's the transition.
Sure.
Where we can say that 5-year-old's going to have that picture, or maybe, for example, Joe Flacco, if he, back in the day when he was playing in Baltimore, he'd pop his head out of his pickup truck, and if a little kid was going, that. I mean, just those little things. It's just the bigger sense of community, but it's also, the enthusiasm we have to pay forward.
Yeah, and I'll even touch upon, the kind of the older segment, not just the kids, but let's talk about the teens and the 20-year-olds that are, bringing enthusiast cars and maybe modifying them, maybe not. Like, people are very surprised when I walk up to a BRZ or a Supra or something, and I'm just like enamored with what they're doing with it. They're like, "Oh, I thought you're just a Porsche guy." I'm like, "No, I'm a car guy. I love everything." And I encourage people in the club to talk to the person that's got the modified Subi, because I bet you that conversation will lead into this is what I have now, this is what I'm building, but man, one day I'd love to have a GT3. Yeah, like that's their
That's the beauty of a Cars and Coffee event, is there's no class structure.
Nope.
And there's no judgment. So
Nope.
how often is it that was it Harvey that brings his Ferrari?
Yeah.
His convertible Ferrari, was it a 60 or 61?
1966 275 GTS.
Yeah. So this multi-million-dollar Ferrari he brings, and you'll see next to it, it could be some kid in their Honda CRX or Civic slammed down. And to me, that's the beauty, that we can walk up and down these rows, and it's not organized like a car show where you have all these cars in one area, all these other cars in the other area.
It's all mixed
As you walk along, it can be a new surprise. And usually everyone's more than happy to talk about their cars. As I always say, how many places can you talk to somebody who drove their Model T to Cars and Coffee? And it's a young guy, and we actually got to turn the car on with the crank, which I never thought I'd ever do that. But so it's a great event like that. I know for our club, PCA, it's also a great opportunity because you get people with Porsches, and we don't officially park in the same area, but we end up parking in the same area, and people see the other Porsches that are like, "Oh, I'll park my Porsche here too," and they may not know anyone in the community. But by the time they leave that event, they've made new friends. And if we ask them, "Are you a member of PCA?" or we'll start talking about some drive we're doing next week, and they're asking about that. And if they're not a member, we say, "Well, join the club, because then you can do the drive with us." And they realize that we're all part of this club, and we do stuff outside of Cars and Coffee. So it's a great get your feet wet type of event.
Absolutely.
I have an observation and also a question first. 605 Saturdays.
605 Saturdays. I missed 6, I should say. Missed 6. I can tell you each individual day. But the last 2 were actually related to our Formula driver, Cameron Doss, where he was racing in Italy in 2019 and 2021 in Barcelona. They said, Will, free trip. I'm like, I'm in.
Yeah.
So, but then there was also a snow day. I think it was off the top of my head. Goodness, it might have been January 23rd, 2016. And there was one in 2017 where I missed as well because it was snowing.
Yeah.
But then before that, it might have just been for like an Orioles game.
So I think you're closer to having spent. So you're like right around 1.5 years of just Saturdays
In the middle of a parking lot.
in the middle of which is weird when you put it like that. Like 10 years, yeah. But when you actually think 605 Saturdays, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's what the average participant doesn't think about is the dedication that people have to put these on.
Yeah, 1.5 years of Saturdays.
So when
That's
they
a
tell
lot of
you to
time.
do stuff, park a certain way, don't rev your engine, listen to them because they're gold. They really are.
Also cleaning up the parking lot
Yep.
if there's any surprises. Or like we had a cherry picker.
But what time do you get there? Because I know you put your Instagram post.
5:30, and
It's always dark when you put the
A few of
Instagram
the PCA folks are very excited about my good Saturday morning yell into the phone. It's a little bit more exuberant, non-caffeinated, mind you. I'm fired up enough about people and enthusiasm. I don't need coffee, but I will partake once in a while. But yeah, 5:30. So I'll get up at normally around 3:45.
So it's like a full day, like a work day in that sense.
yeah.
Like eight
Absolutely.
Are you
hours
always
or more.
Are you always the first person, or does somebody beat you there?
Always. Well, there's a gentleman named John. He's a PCA member. He'll drive whatever seasonal. Could be his Nissan. It could be his Audi. But he's a PCA member. We'll get you in touch with him. He's a great guy, and he has talked about how well organized. He's been in all the clubs. And I won't name names, but he said, "Hey, the PCA is the best." And he's had his feet in every single one.
Thanks, John.
Yeah,
John.
he's a legend. I'll introduce you to him. He's fantastic. But he's the first guy to show up because he loves watching the process. Mm-hmm. And he also feels like my safety organizer because I'm in the middle of this massive football area space, football field space, and I'm the only guy.
Yeah.
And I'm out there with my picker, picking up garbage and things like that, and just talking to security, talking to police because the police will show up for their early morning coffee, just as a moment. Because if there's any sharps or anything like that, it's all medical. If there's anything that looks like a CSI, experiment, then that's so rare.
Yeah.
Maybe 5 times out of 605, but they're always out there. Yeah, but 5:30. That's when you'll see my Instagram start, and I'll do about 50 to 60, maybe 70 Instagram stories.
Wow.
Because I really just want to talk to the people that are there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to use it it's not promotion.
Right.
It's not, hey, more people show up.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm very happy with your event, because you making it a very respectful community and making it, again, I'd love for you to be every week. To take
Nope,
some,
not
I know
gonna
it's
happen.
like
Not gonna
like-
happen.
It's like, Will, I love my hair. I had a full head of hair when I started this. But to an extent, we need to have great events that are respectful and doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
I know Mikey and Mels, and with your leadership, does it right. So when I say, hey, we got a great thing going in Hunt Valley, get out there and enjoy all the shows.
Mm-hmm.
And we could use more, to be honest, because if I go toward 1,000 cars every week on a Saturday.
Yeah.
So the last question is before we move to
Yeah.
the next topics, how many people do you have helping you run your event?
That's just
I
me.
guess, well, it's you, but you also have mall security, though, right?
Oh, yeah, correct. Yes, assured protection. They are not contracted to the area. There's one person on the
But
property.
they're visible, though. I see them.
We try,
yeah.
and that's just a nice olive branch because they're actually their headquarters is not too far away from Hunt Valley.
Police are there sometimes. It's not like a weekly presence. I don't see them.
Well,
unless they're really hiding somewhere.
That was part of my question, actually, is so Cars and Coffee type events start, small-ish usually, and they're free for participants and all that, and volunteer run usually. Right. So for a free event, how do you pay for insurance? How do you get police officers or security guards, when the show reaches that critical mass or whatever? How does that even work? 'Cause I have no clue.
Well, I'll give you the one example where the most cost output was obvious. That would have been that 3rd anniversary when my insurance company said, "Oh, you have effective use for 1 day for the entire property." and not just your lower section, which again has about 700. But then again, you have rotational numbers where 100 people may leave, and you'll get extra 100 more coming in. So you might have 800, through that day. But that morning was 3,000 cars, and I had to make $1,800 worth of signs to drive everybody around the property to make sure everything was perfect, because you respect every single merchant as much or as little you have contact with them. And I think it was $1,000 for 10 or 9 security people, and then the county permit for 9 police cars was $70.
Oh, that's funny.
So it's like $1,000, $70. But
yeah.
we had 9 volunteers on that day.
Yeah. Do you have donations, or you have a sweatshirt, so merch now? It looks like
Well, this is actually printed by Under Armour, and they just said, "We love what you're doing.
Oh, that's super cool.
Here, wear this. We made you something fun," and they'll give me shoes once in a while. Actually,
cool.
I won't mention, but one of their upper management caught me wearing a Nike pair of shoes, and they said, "Will, what happened here? We love you repping," because they're a Baltimore company.
Sure.
I love dealing with the close neighborhood, and I just said, "Hey, Dave," I will mention his first name. I had the other set for about 5 years. I wore the soles out of them. I wore them every single day because I love that connection. And again, they put logos of Hunt Valley Horsepower all over the place. And it almost smelled like Abercrombie and Fitch. It was a nice wrapped individual.
That's a good point, though. I just realized this. I never see anything for sale.
Never.
There's never a charity event. I know you will send in your newsletter saying after Cars and Coffee we're going to such and such place, or one of your sponsors is having an event, and that may be a charity event.
Sponsors.
But the actual event itself, I never see anything for sale. I never see a charity. I never see anything commercial.
Yeah, and that's really the respect of the property first.
Yep.
Because you can get somebody that is, of course, the new car dealership, the used luxury car dealership always wants to prey on Cars and Coffees. And there was a point, I think in 2016, where we did have an issue with somebody wanting our area to become their satellite sales space. And the property, again, with my edict, they did not really gravitate toward the positive. Security addressed, then the police addressed, and that was the one time we've ever had really an effective police action. But to that extent, you just have to simply respect the property and know that we can't have a pop-up coffee booth because they're a coffee merchant.
Sure.
We can't have any for sale signs. When it comes down to, even, of course, every car dealership, how come that private sale over there is okay? So we took them all off the board, and then I created a classifieds on my home website to say, hey, if you want to sell that 911, that 1971 911S, again, my buddy, we might have to talk about that sale coming up soon, one of my buddies, and I'll take that, and I'll take the pictures. Send me a description. I'm not Cars and Bids. I'm not Doug DeMuro or anything like that, but I'll help, because we want to take the sales pressure off the property, and that way, when a real professional salesman says, hey, can I sell my 4 cars here? Well, I don't even allow, Manny. If Manny wanted to come up and say, hey, I have a car to sell, well, we'll put it on the classifieds. And it's that simple. There's always a direct answer.
But you both have dealers, Porsche dealers, that show up to your events,
Correct.
but they don't have a for sale sign. They'll bring a new car, and they'll park it. And they do it very organically, and then people just walk up and are like, oh, what's this? This is the new 4S that just showed up, and they start asking questions about it. So they're essentially selling it without selling it. And there's no sign there or anything. They're just coming in as enthusiasts with a cool car, and, of course, people naturally ask questions. And to me, that's very cool in that it's, like you said, there's not a lineup of cars with for sale signs on them. Yeah. It's just one car that people know it's new, but may not know that it's the dealer general manager or a salesman from the dealer. It's just a cool car they brought, and it's like the soft sell, if you will.
Yeah, that's definitely by design. I think, we go there to enjoy our cars, not to be sold to. But obviously, you have to know that it takes money to put these on. So event organizers will have sponsors, and if they do it organically, I think that it doesn't take away from the experience. It only adds it, because I know with Mikey and Mels, we always ask the dealers to bring their latest and greatest car that people may not have seen, be it the TRX Dodge or the latest Taycan or something like that. It's a value add to it. One thing we do a little bit differently is we have a curated section of cars that I know that are coming, and it's usually supercars, but it could be domestic or import. And then we also have what's called Charity Row, because we do have a organization that we support that goes out and gets food for those that are in need in Howard County and PG County. And so we have 10 spots. It's not anything huge, but it's basically people can say, hey, I would love to park on Charity Row, and as part of parking, they make a donation, or they bring canned foods or something like that. But again, it's very organic. I think I can speak for Will on this one. Is that we're not trying to create a commercial hub for car enthusiasts. We just want people to see cool cars. For me, somewhat curated in the first 2 rows. And then just have fun.
Be sustainable, so Will doesn't have to go buy $1,700 in signs.
And be sustainable, because you do have to buy the signs. In our case, we have to buy signs. We have a DJ to pay for. We have a porta pots that we want to bring in, because we have. And Manny, you asked as far as how many people it takes to run the event. I have at least 3 to 4 volunteers to help with traffic. Traffic is probably my biggest concern of the day, is making sure that we don't create a hardship for the community. Yeah,
and I'll say one quick thing about sponsors. It's really, I started Hunt Valley Horsepower with zero idea of saying, hey, I'm going to draw any sponsors. It was just simply community, and it was the more respected folks, and a lot of them you've had in this chair. Those folks, again, like Mike and like Bob, from AdSpeed, Mike from TPC. Those guys reached out to me and said, hey, how can we help? Because we really like what you're doing. We want to make sure that this is sustainable. Because if I would have took an original job offer that I had from, a local sporting goods manufacturer that might be on my chest, they said, hey, we love what you're doing. What do you think about doing for the next 3 years? And it came down to a point where those job offers were made. But that same week, before Hunt Valley Cars and Coffee became Hunt Valley Horsepower, when it became an official business, it was really to a point of, again, a large automotive, auto parts store said, hey, where are you going to be in 3 years? We love what you're doing. We want you to stay there. Have you ever thought about making this a business? And I did. I said, you ever hear of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? I said, because I saw his college, accreditations. I figured he had that down. And I said, well, I'm going to call this Will's, hierarchy of physical needs. I drew the triangle, and I said, well, these are your sponsors, maybe like lower level, maybe your dent guy, maybe your detailer, maybe your window guy. And above that, you're going to have larger staff, maybe more services, and then all your dealerships. He says, well, why all on one level? I said, well, everyone should be viewed equally. When it comes to cars, there's not a favoritism. Yeah. I love Porsche, and but I can't have them above Ford. On this platform. And so at the top, I'm going to put a keystone, something that everyone can recognize, and I put their name on it. He says, "What does that space cost?" And he goes, "What are you going to do?" He wrote that check instantly. Yeah. He says, "I want you to be part of this." I said, "The first thing I'm doing is turning down my other job offers. We're starting something now called Hunt Valley Horsepower."
Oh, wow. That's interesting to hear that story, yeah.
That's how sponsors come into it. It's really only organizing with the best at your side. And again, the people you've had in this seat are some of those folks.
Absolutely.
So they understand, they directly attach. There's nothing that's not, everything's been organic. They've always reached out to me, and they're people that we trust.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this has opened the eyes to our listeners of what it takes. We certainly encourage you to, if you think there's a need in your area, you want to do this, hopefully some tips that we've shared here will help you out. But again, my soapbox is to support the people that are doing it and help police. And we want to create, this group of people that can continue to provide this to the community, because it is our future. So let's get into, if you don't mind, I think we probably should talk about the newsletters, and make sure if you're not subscribed to eBrake News, Smart Fresh, Performance News, head over to pca.org and sign up. It's free to do so. And let's talk about the latest Tech Art video that dropped.
Yeah, so Tech Art, if you don't know them, is an aftermarket company that makes aftermarket parts for Porsches. But it's not, usually something you can just buy off the shelf. You can go to them and buy parts individually, but you're not going to find it at your Advanced Auto Parts or whatever. And oftentimes they make full cars, complete packages from engine tuning, suspension tuning, and parts. And in this case, it was a carbon fiber aero kit for the 992 GT3. And just a little background, I like an understated look. I'm not somebody who wants to, have everybody looking at me when I drive up. Like, my Porsche Cayman, it's silver. You see them everywhere. I like that. And Tech Art is like the exact opposite. Now, if you imagine, if you're watching this on YouTube or have seen the YouTube video, it's Ruby Stars, so the paint itself is very loud. But I would argue that the carbon fiber aero kit package is really understated. And this car was actually the first car to have Tech Art's, what's it called, rear spoiler 3, which is the ducktail. And it looks really good.
It looks factory. I think that's where they did a good job.
Yeah, and most Tech Arts don't look like that.
It's not like a Gambella where you're like, there's no way Porsche did this. Yeah. This is aftermarket.
Yeah, and you think about that car, and from Ruby Star, if it were black, man, you would have to really look hard to see what's going different, and that's what I like. So it's wind tunnel tested, and it's a body kit, so suspension here is stock. The wheels are Tech Art wheels, actually. And this car also doesn't have the Tech Art interior yet, I guess. So it's just really showing off their new body kit. And I think it looks fantastic. So if you like that sort of thing, watch that video and see what they offer. And you don't have to have a GT3 for all of these parts. I believe you can put the aero kit, except for maybe that front air intake, which is GT3 specific. You can put a lot of that stuff onto other models in Porsche's range.
Now, I've had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with the Tech Art folks. I've been to their factory just out of Stuttgart, and as Damon said, they are a sort of say aftermarket tuner. When a GT3 is not wild enough, when a GT2 is not wild enough, they really do take it to the next level. And typically their builds are like attention grabbing, in your face. Yeah. And there's a segment of people that they want more, something that's even more wild than a GT3 RS, and that's where Tech Art is right up their alley. But with this build, as you said, I think it's very subtle. I love the ducktail. What I will tell you is I've gone through their factory, and you talked about them wind tunnel testing. They take every piece that they're putting on a Porsche serious like Porsche. They're not just doing it for looks. They're wind tunnel testing. They're doing durability testing.
Did he say what wind tunnel they use?
He did. I don't know if
that... And is it full scale or quarter scale?
It's full scale. So there are actually shots in the video.
I think there's a university near Stuttgart or something that Porsche used to use that has a full scale.
Yeah, it's a really nice wind tunnel with a rolling road wind tunnel. So, it simulates the effects of the car driving over a road, not just being stationary with air flowing over it. So, and there are shots, I want to say probably in the, 11 or 12 minute area of their wind tunnel testing. It doesn't have the ducktail. They have the rear spoiler too, which looks like a normal extendable spoiler.
It's a proven spoiler. It's not something that looks pretty and that
they're maintaining the balance of the car.
Which aerodynamically works.
Exactly. You're not going to screw the balance up.
And I didn't realize this, and I saw this when I was at the factory, but I guess that makes sense, is there is software where they start their initial design and you run it through the simulation software to get close, right? But then, because the amount of time you spend in a wind tunnel is very costly, so they want to make sure that when they are there,
but if you're watching YouTube,
there it is on YouTube. You're
and then that's the rear spoiler too. No ducktail on this particular car, but the rest of the aero kit is in there.
Very cool stuff.
Yep.
All right, let's get into the news, Manny. Let's first up talk about the Targa.
Well, before we do that, as you're listening to this, Tech Tactics Live will have been recorded. It's about hiring a car appraiser. And we have Doug Eman, who's a Cars and Coffee regular.
Great guy.
With his many different cars. Long time, almost a 25-year PCA member. And I think he told me like a couple thousand appraisals he's done in his life. And it's we get a lot of phone calls here at the office about appraising a car. And I asked Doug to come on so he could tell us exactly what an appraiser does, how to hire an appraiser, what to look for, how an appraiser can help you. One of the things is a diminished value. If your car's in an accident, he can help get the most money from the insurance company in a diminished value type of situation. So, if you can, go to our YouTube channel and just hit live or current videos, and you'll see the Tech Tactics Live. So on to the news. Spy shots on the new 2025 Targa. For the casual viewer, it looks nothing different than previous Targas, which is Porsche's way. But one of the big things is it just looks like it's a hybrid model, mainly because there's a sticker on the car. I think a yellow or green sticker.
Yeah, it's a yellow sticker on the rear window.
Yeah, that identifies it as a hybrid or electric. There you see the little bit of the sticker on the if you're watching YouTube. So that, to me, that was the most exciting part of this this story is that they're already testing the cars out there with the hybrid. And when we were talking with having our meeting with the Porsche folks about Tech Tactics East, one of the things we wish we could talk about, but they don't have any information yet, is about the new hybrid. So hopefully by this time next year, maybe we can have someone from Porsche tell us all about the new hybrid system, and we'll know all about it by then. But you're starting to see more and more of their new 911s going to have that sticker on it as they transition to hybrids.
All right. Next up, we have some news with regards to Pirelli and P0s.
Yeah, they're a sponsor for Tech Tactics Live, but beyond that, they are heavy in development with Porsche on the Cayenne. And this is pretty cool because when you're shopping for tires, simply getting OEM isn't because Porsche picked the cheapest tire they could put on the car to save money. There's a lot of development work that goes, and if you talk to the tire manufacturers, they'll tell you what a pain in the butt Porsche can be with the demands as to what they want their tires to do and how they want it to feel. So there's a lot of work that goes on to it. The Michelin does the same thing, and I think Goodyear even has to work with Porsche to get that end spec. So, but the new Cayenne, and not only is it a new Cayenne, but the tires are also new from Pirelli for this Cayenne. So,
yeah, I was fortunate enough I got a hot lap with one of the instructors in the Cayenne GT at Spa, and they were shod with street Pirelli tires, and my goodness, I've never
but really was
turbo? You said Turbo GT.
Turbo GT.
Yes, street tires, Trofeo R's, I believe, right?
Yeah, but Damon and I got to drive it at Snowden River Parkway, so that's about the same as Spa.
About the same as Spa.
For us mere mortals that can't name drop tracks.
I didn't mean that to be a flex, but now that I'm thinking about it in hindsight, that's a pretty darn
Anyways,
good flex.
I was cruising along Lamar.
Okay, all right. Moving along. Let's talk about Porsche and consulting.
Yeah, I just thought this was cool because Porsche is more than just the car manufacturer. They have a lot of different divisions. A lot of them are in Atlanta headquarters. When they built the Atlanta headquarters, they wanted to also consolidate all their different businesses. And Porsche Consulting is one of them. And they're like one of the largest consulting firms in Germany. Mm-hmm. And so they moved to a new headquarters in Germany, which is the Porsche Design Tower. It's
in consulting, that's where things like maybe the Harley V-Rod engine would be.
I think engineering,
and I think all-wheel drive systems for a certain Swedish SUV years ago.
Yeah, a lot of stuff that we probably never see or realize that they're
I don't
behind.
remember the percentage or the dollar amount, but I remember someone mentioning how, you think Porsche and the business and the amount of money that they bring about by making cars. But I remember there was some staggering figure where Porsche Consulting was, I don't want to say it was a third, but it was a significant I think this is when they were trying to do the stock options and stuff. And they were saying, we sell cars, but where we make a lot of money is in Porsche Consulting. Yeah, I had no idea.
The margins are probably.
And it goes, the cool thing is it goes back to the beginning of Porsche before they became a car manufacturer.
Yep.
They were a consulting engineering firm, and 356 is their project. It was a 356 project. They actually started at Type 7 was the first one because they wanted to look like they had been doing things for a while, so they started at 7. But they went along the line and happened to be Type 356 was the car. But they did a lot of consulting work for other car manufacturers before they started doing their own.
So this weekend I didn't have much car stuff to do because I was actually with the executive council in sort of our planning meeting here at PCA headquarters and thinking about what we're doing for 2024. But I did get a text from Manny, unfortunately, with some sad news.
Yeah, Herbert Linga, well, going back to Porsche Consulting, he got a job with Porsche when he was 14 years old. So this would have been a little bit after the war. He was one of 8 apprentices that Porsche hired. Basically he stayed with Porsche his entire life. And this guy, they called him Mr. Do Everything. And wow, what a life lived with automotive. He was involved with almost everything aspect. And the cool thing was he actually reported to the professor and Ferry Porsche.
Wow.
And there's pictures of him, speaking to, Ferry Porsche's father, Professor Porsche, and holding cylinder heads. And he was the first mechanic that Porsche hired when they moved the factory from Gmünd to Stuttgart. He set up a, we take for granted now that there's emergency cars fly out of the pits whenever there's an accident in a Formula One or any kind of race. But before then, that wasn't the case. They would bring the people there in an ambulance or a truck. But these cars now are, you have a doctor, a surgeon on board. They have all this equipment to do something right on the scene. And that's one of the things he pioneered was taking a 914-6, weighed 2 tons, but it carried all this firefighting equipment, extrication, surgical equipment, a doctor on board, and it could lap the Nürburgring in less than 10 minutes, which was a pretty formidable task. But, yeah, unfortunately, he passed away at, 94, 95 years old?
95, yeah.
95. But I met him once, I think, at a Rennsport. And just like many of the people of his age, very friendly, very happy that people still remembered him. And I do remember that he was so thrilled that PCA would continue to keep him as an honorary member from 1956 until he passed away. He was an honorary member because one of his jobs also was to set up a customer service network in the United States. So he lived in New York City, but he would drive as far down to Miami to fix people's cars. So along the way, he would get to know a lot of these people who eventually, these same folks would form the Porsche Club of America. And so he was, can you imagine that having somebody from Porsche just come into your house to fix the car?
House calls.
Exactly.
Do you think there are legends like that in the making today? I mean, this is a gentleman that has spent his entire career with really one company.
I think there are, sure. Yeah, it's because we know a lot of people that
I think Andreas Pruninger, is a standout, kind of just top ahead.
Well, look at Dr. Frank Walliser. When we met him, he was a
That's
project
the other guy,
manager,
yeah.
and now how high he is at Porsche. So, I think a lot of people stay at Porsche for a long time. And he was Herbert Linga was a driver, too. So he was a person who would drive every 356 that left the factory to make sure it was running right and report back if anything was wrong. But he also was a very good racing driver. And so he won his class in Mille Miglia, the Carrera Panamericana. And one of the reasons they would pick him as a co-driver was because he was a mechanic, too. So if the cars broke down in these, marathon rallies, he could also fix it. So it was, cool. Just to think that he was a great driver and he was a team player because there was times when he was asked to slow down so the customers who bought these cars could win or do better. So he wouldn't fight it. He would just start slowing down and let the customer pass, so it would look like the customer won, not the factory car.
Very cool. All right, so let's get into some events here. I know we were in a conference call yesterday preparing for Tech Tactics East, which is February 24th and 25th. Registration opens January 17th.
So by the time you listen to this, it should open on the Wednesday. I think it's the 17th.
Yep.
So it's going to be very cool for people who live in near Eastern Pennsylvania or along that way. We're going to record a lot of this, so we'll be able to show it on our YouTube channel. But we have some very cool people coming from Porsche that, as always, will give tech-related presentations. And one of the instructors there, Rolf, we were talking about general topics, and one of them was I didn't know my Porsche did that. And we talked about that. I was talking about rear fog lights, how a lot of people didn't realize they had rear fog lights on their cars or how to use them. And he sent me a whole list of stuff. A lot of it I didn't realize or don't know exactly what he meant. So he's going to go over and basically do that. I think that'll be a 3-parter because so many people are going to be, I can see their aha face when they realize, because, they buy these cars used. And there's no salesman necessarily who's going to sit down with them for 3 hours and say, let's go over all the stuff your car can do. And so they may discover something new, and the entry fee will be worthwhile just for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's going to be great. Works Reunion Amelia Island, which is March 1st. Registration has already opened. The judged cars or registration for judged cars has sold out, but we still have plenty of space in the corral lot. So make sure if you want to come down to Amelia Island, it's a great event. I have our friend Paul Gentili. I think he's making his first appearance at Works Reunion Amelia Island, and he's very excited. Lots of stuff to see.
Is he going to be perusing the auctions there for his Cayman R or Boxer Spider?
Or Spider, yeah. I think he's looking to do a little bit of everything.
I thought maybe that's why he's flying down so he can drive back.
I wouldn't put that past him. Next, we have, again, many of us have put our cars away for the winter or just don't want to get all that salt. So consider PCA Sim Racing, PCASimRacing.com, and get your thrill online. Race with other PCA members and just sharpen your skills while you're waiting out the weather. PCA Treffin at Sea, over 650 PCA members have already registered, looking to be an amazing event. And as I mentioned last week, we are inviting folks from the Porsche Club of Great Britain. So it's gonna be an international affair.
And Melanie said we're up to 650 members so far.
Yep.
The magic number is what, 1,400? We get a boat to ourselves?
1,500, and we get a boat to ourselves. Yeah.
So we can yank the whatever country they're flying under and fly the PCA flag.
Yeah, exactly. They'll literally put the PCA decal on the side of the ship. So.
Will they really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely got to get a.
I'm
telethon.
Like, I want to do that, but I'm also it comes back to having, man, we had 800 people. Now you're saying 1,500 people to take care of.
Like a PCA Pirates.
Hey, we've got some swag we want to show off. So if you don't mind,
Charlotte, our member services manager, asked me to remind viewers that we have some Porsche Club Insider. This is Damon's QVC moment. He gets to hold the water bottle, and you have to go to our web store, which I guess we can put a link on the description for the. If you go to YouTube, if you can, you go to PCA.org and. I think it's under the should have been
PCAWebstore.com or .org, I think.
But I think you can go right to the website, and
the website has it.
But you got to find it on the website.
Now, the first time I saw these, I think she had them for Porsche Parade this summer, and honestly, I was like, really? Are people going to buy these? And they sold really, really well.
You go into membership at the top, and then you should go down to Shop PCA.
There you go.
I think you have to be a PCA member to buy one, though.
So I recently was gifted a mug and one of these. Is it like a thermos? Can you put coffee in that one? I know some things you can't put.
That's an insulated bottle.
Insulated, so yeah, you can use coffee with that. But the mug, all my mugs at home, the loop is for your fingers is like half the size of this, and so if you have big hands and like to grip. The coffee mug with
sell it, David. Sell it, David.
This is the one to buy.
Sell it, David.
You don't have to do the
look at this.
Finger.
The QVC counter saying we sold 300 mugs already.
So, yes.
So there we go. We did our part for Charlotte.
There you go.
Remind members that I think she needs more room in the storage room, so she wants to sell some of our. And of course, we're still giving away stickers. Send a email to podcast@pca.org, and you can get a sticker inside, outside, whatever you want.
Very good. So, gentlemen, we've gone over, but I felt like it was a quick, fun discussion. Yeah. Anything else before we sign off?
I think I'm good.
Will, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on any given Saturday.
It's going to be nice this Saturday, Will.
Possibly.
So thanks for listening. If you aren't currently a PCA member and own a Porsche, grab that VIN, head over to PCA.org, and we'll set you up with membership. If you're looking for that special Porsche for your driveway or garage, we have the test drive program. And again, you can just head over to PCA.org and sign up there. Remember to follow our podcast Instagram page, behind the scenes photos and videos, Porsche Club Insider, all one word. And of course, please like, comment, subscribe to our newsletters. Again, we love reading your comments and love seeing your support. And with that, until next time, stay safe, and we'll catch you down the road.